I'm here with Mike Reich from Seabourne Consulting. Good to be here with you, Mike.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about what Seabourne does, what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so we are a consulting business here in DC, and we really do two things. So we do back-end development for sort of data management platforms, and we really focus on this idea that data should be open and usable. So we spend a lot of time working with sort of older databases, trying to figure out how we can take those and do interesting new things, like put the data online, make it available through a mobile device. And then the other side of what we do is really thinking about how can you make data discoverable. So through sort of data explorers, data visualization tools, places where there's really interesting but complicated data and off-the-shelf solutions don't give you enough of sort of the flexibility or the visibility that you need.
Definitely. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of the discoverability projects you've been working on, or maybe some data visualization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we just wrapped up a really interesting project with the World Resources Institute here in DC with their Climate Data Explorer. So this just got relaunched in June. And this is essentially a tool that takes all of this great climate data that WRI has and produces and makes it available online in raw formats for sort of data scientists to take and play with. But also we've built in some really neat visualization and exploration tools for sort of the everyday user to be able to drop in and really sort of get some interesting perspectives on how climate change and greenhouse gas emissions are sort of distributed across the world.
You mentioned that you do work with mobile in addition to desktop. Talk to me about working with data on those two platforms. Tell me about the difference there.
Yeah, so the thing that we find is that mobile presents some really good opportunities and sort of a growing set of opportunities for organizations to reach users when they're away from their desktops, right? And that's sort of the obvious side of it. The thing that we see that's really interesting is that mobile users are looking for the mobile web and mobile apps to do what we call sort of task-based things, right? So they want to find a location, or they want to submit a specific form, or they want to email somebody or send a text, right? So these ideas that users want to do very particular sort of discrete things through a mobile device as compared to what we see with desktop users, which is they're really interested in browsing and exploring. So they may have a question, but they don't necessarily know what the answer is or where to find it. And so the challenge for building for those two platforms can often be really different. Where on the desktop, you want to build something that's really immersive and full-featured and allows users to like I said, sort of explore and engage with information, where on mobile, you want to really provide them with an experience that lets them do what they need to do in the fewest clicks or the fewest sort of interactions possible. So from a data perspective, it's really, really interesting because data on mobile is really about sort of pushing information to a user that they can make use of, that they're looking for, that they know they already need. So you can think of sort of like push notifications, right, alerts. Whereas with the desktop, it's much more provide them everything and give them some tools to sort of filter and find what it is they're interested in. But again, we really like that idea of exploring and discovery through the desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys work with a lot of sort of federal agencies and sort of bigger organizations with big legacy systems. What are some of the challenges associated with like doing this cutting edge data stuff and bringing it into the enterprise?
Yeah, I think often the biggest challenge, especially in the federal space, is really the perceived gap between where agencies are today, especially with these legacy systems, and where they need to be to do a lot of the cool things like have a mobile app or have a really big public data initiative. And I think that the thing that we've sort of through our experience realized is that the perception of how big the gap is usually a lot bigger than how big the gap is in reality, right? There's a lot of really interesting sort of advances and approaches in technology now that allow agencies to take these legacy systems and put them online without a huge data warehouse project or without a really big IT spend. So we like this idea of sort of pragmatic approaches that allow you to use the system that you put a lot of money and investment into, but still get a lot of the benefits of sort of open data, of mobile, of really slick web interfaces, without a 5-year project.
Definitely. You guys seem sort of uniquely positioned in the sense that a lot of people complain that hackathons don't scale up, or that people have all these cool ideas and that maybe they die a week out or whatever. And I guess talk to me a little bit about being that intermediary and being the implementers.
Yeah, well, I think the great thing about hackathons is that they really bring innovation and energy to some of these IT problems that really has been lacking, right? And I think a lot of, especially in the government space, the government IT folks have a really difficult job of service delivery, right? They have to make sure that what they're building works for everybody all the time, and they tend to be pretty risk averse in how they build these systems. And so hackathons bring in a different perspective, and really, again, that sort of energy and innovation and engagement around the data and around the sort of purpose of an agency, right? And so the real challenge is, how do you translate that energy and excitement into something that becomes part of the enterprise, part of the day-to-day technology that an agency uses? And that's really where we've seen the gap, right? And I think everybody's been to a hackathon that they left feeling really excited and engaged, and then it just sort of never went anywhere, right? The ideas just sort of petered out. So where we like to play is sort of, as you said, bridging that gap between some of the really innovative things you can do, but bringing in some knowledge and I think pragmatic understanding and acceptance of the constraints that these agencies have to work with in security, right? They have to protect personally identifiable information. They have to meet some particular requirements around security and architecture. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, they have to build something that meets the needs of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users all the time, rather than a single particular use case that was built around in a day. And so that that process of bringing the innovative concept into practice at the enterprise is sort of the fun challenge that we really like tackling.
Definitely. Have you found that it's that there's been a change sort of on the federal level in the thinking of how how data can be approached? It seems like there's quite a bit of momentum behind this now. What with sort of the open data policy and some of the forward-thinking stuff from various sort of federal sources. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it's been really interesting to watch with this administration. I think the different approach they've taken to not just sort of IT projects, but data in general, right? And I think the exciting thing is the conversation at these agencies has really shifted towards an outcomes-based approach. We want to do X. We want to provide a mobile app, or we want to provide a set of open data to the public, rather than sort of the old way of talking about it, which was really sort of means like, we're going to build a system, right? And we hope that that system maybe does some things in the future, right? So the thing I like about that shift in the conversation is it makes it a lot easier to again sort of bridge that gap between innovation and technology, because you can say, the outcome, and I think the administration's done a good job of this, say the outcome is, public data, or is mobile service delivery. We want to be able to provide these government services through mobile, and then really let the agencies have the flexibility in figuring out how to get to that point. So, we talked about sort of the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. I think that's been a great one to actually bring in some of this change in thinking to the on-the-ground conversations that are happening at each of these agencies. And we've certainly noticed over the last couple of years that Presidential Innovation Fellows are really changing the discourse and really being able to show that some of these outcomes, some of these really cool things that the private sector is doing, the government can do just as well, if not better, in some cases. Because the real opportunity for agencies, I think, is they have access to a whole bunch of information and data and content that nobody else does. So they're in this really unique position to do some incredibly cool things. The challenge has always been bridging that gap between the possibility and the reality. And that's where, I think programs like the Presidential Innovations Fellows have really started to show, what are the cool things that can be done.
Right. And then finally, when we were talking earlier, you had a line about data is not just numbers, and I like that. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's sort of back to, what is the opportunity for the federal government, but this also plays for state and local governments. And we really think about, data as really being a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you have content, sort of text, right? And this can be, long-form public documents. So you think about the Federal Register, right? That's a whole bunch of really cool data, information that is content. At the other end, you have, numbers, right? Sort of tabular data that you would see in an Excel spreadsheet. The technology approaches that a lot of people think apply only to data actually apply really well to information along that spectrum. So we've seen successes, with content as APIs, really allowing some awesome innovation and some awesome applications. Just like, data through APIs and open formats allows some really cool things to be done with data visualizations and sort of data analysis.
Absolutely.
And I think that, agencies are beginning to sort of expand that conversation, and the digital strategy and the open data policy talks specifically about, content as APIs everywhere. Thinking about those technology approaches as applying to information generally, whether it's text or whether it's numbers.
Well, thanks so much for being here. This is Mike Reich from Seabourne Consulting.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.